When Manhattan's most dangerous crime lord realizes his housekeeper is the only person who's ever made him feel anything real, he becomes the biggest threat to her survival. Adrian Cade built an empire on fear, control, and violence. He doesn't do weakness, he doesn't do trust, and he damn sure doesn't do love. But Lena Carter walked into his fortress 3 months ago, and now he can't breathe without knowing where she is, who she's with, what secrets she's hiding behind those guarded eyes. Tonight, everything explodes. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The penthouse was dark when Lena pushed through the service entrance at 11:47 p.m., her shoulders tight with exhaustion and her mind still buzzing from Professor Chen's lecture on advanced accounting principles. She kicked off her sneakers in the mudroom, wincing at the blister forming on her left heel, and padded quietly across the marble floor toward the staff quarters. She made it exactly 12 feet before the light slammed on. Lena froze, her bag sliding off her shoulder and hitting the floor with a thud that echoed through the cavernous space like a gunshot. Adrian Cade stood in the center of his living room, backlit by the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Manhattan's glittering skyline. He wore black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing the network of scars that covered his forearms. Burn marks, knife wounds, one particularly nasty circle on his left wrist that looked like a bullet had gone clean through. His dark hair was disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it for hours, and his ice-blue eyes were locked on her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. "Where the hell have you been?" It wasn't a question. Lena's pulse kicked into overdrive, but she kept her voice steady. 3 months working for Adrian Cade had taught her that showing fear was like blood in the water. "The grocery store stayed open late for inventory. I told Marcus I'd be—" "Don't." Adrian's voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. He moved toward her with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. "Don't insult my intelligence by lying to me." "I'm not lying. You've been gone for 4 hours. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and clean that didn't quite mask the sharper scent of whiskey. "The grocery store closes at 10. It's now midnight, so I'll ask you one more time, Lena. Where were you?" Her mind raced. This was bad. This was really bad. In 3 months, she'd seen Adrian angry exactly twice. Once, when a supplier tried to short him on a weapons shipment, and once when he'd discovered someone on his payroll was skimming money. The supplier had ended up in the hospital with 2 broken legs. The employee had simply disappeared. But this wasn't business anger. This was something else entirely, something darker and more volatile burning behind those cold eyes. "I had errands to run," she said carefully. "Personal errands." Personal errands. He repeated the words like they tasted wrong. "At midnight." "Yes." "Try again." Lena's jaw tightened. She'd worked minimum wage jobs since she was 16, had clawed her way through her mother's medical bills and funeral costs, had survived being broke and desperate and invisible in a city that didn't give a damn about people like her. She wasn't going to be intimidated by some rich criminal with control issues, no matter how dangerous he was. "I don't owe you a detailed itinerary of my time off," she said, meeting his gaze head-on. "You hired me to clean your house and cook your meals. What I do on my own time is my business." Something flashed across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, or anger, or something she couldn't quite identify. He took another step closer, invading her space deliberately. "You live under my roof," he said softly. "You sleep in a room I pay for, eat food I provide, exist in a world I control. Everything you do is my business." "That's not what the contract says." "Fuck the contract." His hand shot out, not touching her, but bracing against the wall beside her head, boxing her in. "You think I don't know when someone's hiding something? You think I've survived this long by being stupid?" Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself not to back away. "I'm not hiding anything." "Then where were you?" "Out." "With who?" Her eyes narrowed. "What?" "You heard me." Adrian's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, rough and raw. "Who the hell are you seeing behind my back?" For a moment, Lena could only stare at him. Then the absurdity of the accusation hit her like cold water. "Are you serious right now?" She shoved his arm away and stepped to the side, putting distance between them. "You think I'm, what, sneaking around with some guy? That's what this is about? Answer the question. No. She grabbed her bag from the floor and straightened, anger replacing her initial fear. No, I'm not going to stand here at midnight and defend myself against some paranoid accusation. I'm tired, my feet hurt, and I have to be up in 5 hours to make your breakfast. So unless you're planning to fire me, I'm going to bed. She turned toward the staff quarters, half expecting him to stop her. He didn't, but his voice followed her down the hallway, low and dangerous and laced with something that sounded almost like pain. This isn't over, Lena. 3 months earlier, the office smelled like old coffee and desperation. Lena sat in a plastic chair that had seen better decades, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide the trembling, and tried not to look at the stack of medical bills threatening to spill out of her second-hand purse. Across the desk, a woman named Gloria Santos scrolled through something on her computer screen, her acrylic nails clicking rhythmically against the keys. So, Gloria said, without looking up, says here you've got hospitality experience. 3 years at the Marriott downtown, 2 years at that boutique place in Brooklyn. Good references from both. Yes, ma'am. And you left because... Lena swallowed. My mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I needed to be home to take care of her. Gloria's eyes softened slightly. I'm sorry, honey. How's she doing? She passed 2 months ago. Ah, hell. Gloria sat back in her chair, studying Lena with the kind of shrewd assessment that came from years of reading people. And now you're drowning in medical debt and rent you can't pay, looking for anything that'll keep you off the street. It wasn't a question, but Lena nodded anyway. There was no point in lying. Her situation was written all over her. In the clothes that had been nice once, but were starting to fray at the seams, in the hollows under her eyes from too many nights lying awake doing impossible math, in the quiet desperation she couldn't quite hide no matter how hard she tried. Gloria tapped her nails against the desk, thinking. Then she leaned forward. I've got a position, she said slowly. Live-in housekeeper. Private residence, Upper East Side penthouse. The pay is, well, it's significantly above market rate. Lena's stomach tightened with suspicion. Nothing came that easy. How significantly? $80,000 a year plus room and board. The number hit Lena like a physical blow. She'd been making $32,000 at the Marriott, and that was before she'd had to quit. $80,000 was impossible. $80,000 was a trap. What's the catch? She asked quietly. Gloria's expression didn't change. The employer is extremely private. He values discretion above all else. You'll sign an NDA that makes Fort Knox look chatty. You'll have limited time off, and when you do leave the property, you'll need to coordinate with his security team. The work itself is standard: cooking, cleaning, laundry, general household management, but the environment is demanding. Demanding how? He's not an easy man to work for. He has very specific expectations and very little patience for mistakes. The last 3 housekeepers didn't make it past the probationary period. What happened to them? They quit. Gloria met her eyes. Look, I'll be straight with you because I like you and because I think you might actually last. My client is complicated. He's controlling, he's intense, and he doesn't do warm and fuzzy. But he pays on time, he doesn't harass his staff, and if you can handle his moods and follow his rules, it's the best paycheck you'll ever see for this kind of work. Lena's mind spun through the numbers. $80,000 a year would clear her mother's medical debt in less than 2 years, would let her start saving, maybe go back to school, build something resembling a future instead of just treading water until she drowned. What's his name? She asked. Gloria hesitated. Adrian Cade. The name meant nothing to Lena, but something in Gloria's tone made her pause. Should I know who that is? No, Gloria said carefully, and that's probably for the best. So, you interested? Lena thought about the eviction notice taped to her apartment door. Thought about the collection agencies that called 6 times a day. Thought about her mother's last words. I'm sorry I'm leaving you with this mess, baby. Promise me you'll build something good anyway. When do I start? The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building that probably cost more than Lena would make in 10 lifetimes. Marcus, the head of Adrian's security team, escorted her up in a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. his expression professionally neutral as he ran through the basic ground rules. Mr. Cade values his privacy, Marcus said. His voice had the flat effect of someone who'd given this speech too many times. You don't talk about what you see or hear in this apartment. You don't bring guests. You don't take photos. You keep your head down and do your job, and you'll be fine. Understood, Lena said. Your quarters are in the east wing, private bedroom and bathroom, separate entrance for when you need to leave the building. Mr. Cade's suite is in the west wing. You don't go in there unless specifically instructed. He keeps irregular hours and values quiet. Most days he won't even acknowledge you're here. Sounds perfect. Marcus gave her a look that might have been sympathy. One more thing. Mr. Cade has trust issues. He's going to test you, probably multiple times. Don't take it personally. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Lena stepped out and tried not to gape. The space was massive, easily 5,000 square feet of open-concept living area with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. Everything was done in shades of black, white, and gray, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. A kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Furniture that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical bill. Art on the walls that Lena suspected might be original. It was beautiful. It was cold. It felt like a mausoleum. Mr. Cade is in a meeting, Marcus said, setting her single suitcase down near the hallway that led to the east wing. Your orientation packet is in your room. Study it. He'll want to meet you tomorrow morning at 6. 6 a.m.? He keeps early hours. Marcus headed back toward the elevator, then paused. Miss Carter? The last housekeeper made it 3 weeks. The one before that lasted 5 days. If you're smart, you'll keep your distance and remember this is just a job. Don't get curious. Don't try to fix him. And definitely don't think you're special. The elevator doors closed, leaving Lena alone in the silence. She stood there for a long moment, taking in the sterile perfection of her new home, wondering what kind of man lived like this. Then she grabbed her suitcase and went to find her room. Adrian Cade returned to his penthouse at 2:17 a.m., his knuckles bruised and his mind still buzzing with adrenaline from the night's work. He'd spent 3 hours in a warehouse in Queens, personally overseeing a transaction that had required his presence to keep both parties honest, and another hour dealing with the fallout when one of those parties had tried to renegotiate at gunpoint. The renegotiation had not gone well for them. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the elevator, shrugged out of his blood-spattered jacket, and was halfway to his suite when he smelled it. Coffee. Fresh coffee, rich and dark, coming from the kitchen. Adrian's hand went automatically to the gun holstered at his back. Marcus had mentioned something about the new housekeeper moving in today, but it was 2 in the morning. The staff quarters should be dark and empty. He moved silently toward the kitchen, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. The woman standing at his coffee maker had her back to him. She was small, maybe 5'4" in the sneakers she wore with faded jeans and an oversized sweater, dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was humming something under her breath, completely oblivious to his presence. Adrian watched her for a moment, taking in the easy way she moved through his space like she belonged there. The fact that she'd somehow figured out his coffee maker when the last housekeeper had needed 3 demonstrations. Then he stepped into the light. You're up late? The woman spun around, her hand flying to her chest. Coffee sloshed over the rim of the mug she'd been filling, and she swore under her breath as it burned her fingers. Jesus, she gasped. You scared the hell out of me. That's my coffee maker, Adrian said. I know. I'm sorry. She set the mug down and grabbed a towel, wiping at the spill with quick, efficient movements. I couldn't sleep. I didn't think you'd be home. Marcus said you keep late hours, but I figured... You figured you'd help yourself to my things? Her hand stilled. When she looked up at him, Adrian saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected. Not fear exactly, but wariness, like she was assessing him the same way he was assessing her. I made a full pot, she said evenly. There's plenty for both of us, but if you want me to pour this out and start over, I will. Adrian studied her. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-20s maybe, with dark eyes and the kind of face that would be easy to overlook in a crowd. Pretty enough, but nothing remarkable. Nothing that should have made him pause. But there was something in the set of her shoulders, the direct way she met his gaze despite the tension radiating through her body. Something that reminded him of... He shut that thought down hard. What's your name? Lena Carter. I'm your new... I know who you are. Adrian moved past her to grab the mug she'd filled, deliberately invading her space to see if she'd flinch. She didn't, though he felt her breath catch. Marcus briefed you on the rules? Yes. Well, then you know I don't tolerate questions, I don't tolerate gossip, and I sure as hell don't tolerate theft. I wasn't stealing your coffee, Lena said, and there was just enough edge in her voice to make it interesting. I was borrowing it at 2 in the morning when no one was using it. There's a difference. Adrian's eyebrows rose. The last housekeeper had called him sir approximately 40 times in their first conversation and had barely made eye contact. This one was arguing with him about semantics while he stood in his own kitchen with blood on his shirt. He should fire her on the spot. Instead, he took a sip of the coffee, perfect, exactly the way he liked it, and leaned against the counter. You're not afraid of me, he said. Lena hesitated, clearly weighing her answer. Should I be? Most people are. Most people probably haven't spent the last 6 months watching their mother die in a hospital room. Her voice was quiet but steady. I'm not saying I'm not intimidated, Mr. Cade, but I've got bigger things to be afraid of than a man with a bad attitude and a caffeine habit. Adrian felt something shift in his chest, an unexpected flicker of what? Amusement? Respect? Interest? All three, maybe. The blood doesn't bother you? He asked, gesturing to his shirt. I figure it's none of my business. Smart answer. That's me, real smart. Lena poured herself a new cup of coffee, her hand steady now, despite the tension still evident in her shoulders. For what it's worth, I'm good at my job. I don't gossip, I don't steal, and I can make more than coffee. I just need this position to work out, so I'll follow your rules and stay out of your way. That's the deal, right? Adrian took another sip of coffee, studying her over the rim of the mug. There was something refreshing about her directness, her refusal to grovel or perform, something that made him want to push, to see what it would take to crack that composed exterior. The deal, he said slowly, is that you work for me until you quit like all the others, or until you fuck up badly enough that I fire you. Most people don't make it a month. Then I guess we'll see if I'm most people. She met his eyes when she said it, and Adrian felt that flicker in his chest again, sharper this time, almost like pain. He drained his coffee and set the mug in the sink, suddenly needing to put distance between himself and this woman who looked at him like he was just a person instead of a weapon. 6 a.m., he said over his shoulder as he headed for his suite. I expect breakfast on the table. What would you like? Surprise me. He didn't look back, but he heard her soft exhale of relief as the distance grew between them. In his suite, Adrian stripped off his bloody clothes and stepped into a shower hot enough to hurt. He stood under the spray until his skin turned red, trying to wash away the memory of those dark eyes looking at him without fear, without judgment, without the calculated deference everyone else in his life showed him. She'd last 2 weeks, tops. Then she'd see what he really was, and she'd run like all the rest. Adrian told himself he'd be relieved when it happened. He told himself he didn't care either way. He almost believed it. Lena made eggs Benedict. It was a gamble. The dish required skill and precision, and if she screwed it up, she'd be confirming every doubt Adrian probably had about her. But her mother had loved eggs Benedict, had taught Lena how to make the hollandaise sauce from scratch when she was 12, and there was something comforting about falling back on muscle memory while her nerves screamed at her to run. She had the plates arranged perfectly on the dining table at 5:58 a.m. Eggs. Benedict with Canadian bacon, fresh fruit, and coffee in a carafe to keep it hot. When Adrian walked out of his suite, he'd showered and changed into a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lena's entire wardrobe, his dark hair slicked back and his face showing no trace of the exhaustion he must be feeling after only a few hours of sleep. He looked every inch the successful businessman, all polished edges and controlled power. Except for the eyes. Those ice blue eyes were sharp and assessing as they swept over the table, lingering on the plates for a long moment before moving to her face. Eggs Benedict, he said neutrally. You said surprise you. Lena kept her voice professional, her hands clasped in front of her like she was working at the Marriott again. If you don't like it, I can make something else. Adrian sat down without responding. He cut into the eggs with precise movements, watching as the yolk ran golden across the English muffin. Took a bite, chewed slowly. Lena held her breath. "The hollandaise is perfect," Adrian said finally. "Not too thick, good acid balance. The eggs are poached exactly right. Where'd you learn to cook like this?" "My mother taught me." Something flickered across his face, there and gone too fast for her to identify. "She trained professionally?" "No, she just loved cooking. Said food was how you showed people you cared about them." Adrian took another bite, his expression unreadable. She was wrong. The bluntness of it stung more than Lena expected. She told herself it didn't matter what this man thought about her mother's philosophy, that his opinion was worth exactly nothing, but her voice came out sharper than she intended. "With all due respect, Mr. Cade, you didn't know her. I know that caring about people is a liability." Adrian met her eyes. "It makes you weak, makes you vulnerable. Your mother's gone, and here you are drowning in her medical debt, working for a man you don't know in a world you don't understand. Tell me how well all that caring worked out for her." Lena's jaw tightened. She wanted to walk out, wanted to tell him to take his $80,000 and shove it somewhere anatomically improbable. But she couldn't afford to, so she swallowed her anger and forced her voice level. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Cade?" Adrian stared at her for a long moment, like he was waiting for something. When she didn't rise to the bait, he went back to his breakfast. "No, that'll be all." Lena turned to leave. "Actually," his voice stopped her at the edge of the dining room. "I'm having guests tonight. 10 people, 8 p.m., dinner and drinks. Can you handle that?" "Of course. They're important business associates. Everything needs to be perfect." "It will be. I'm not talking about hotel quality perfect. I'm talking about the kind of perfect that doesn't draw attention, that makes people comfortable enough to talk freely." Adrian set down his fork, his gaze intense. "Can you do that, Lena?" The use of her first name caught her off guard, sent an unexpected shiver down her spine that she immediately suppressed. "Yes," she said firmly. "I can do that." "Good." He dismissed her with a nod and went back to his breakfast like she'd already ceased to exist. Lena escaped to the kitchen and leaned against the counter, her heart pounding. 2 weeks, Marcus had said. The last housekeeper lasted 3. Lena Carter had survived her mother's death and the subsequent financial catastrophe. She'd survived being broke and desperate in the most expensive city in the country. She could survive Adrian Cade. She just had to remember that this was temporary, a means to an end. She'd keep her head down, do her job, collect her paychecks, and get out. Simple. Except it wasn't simple. That night's dinner party taught Lena more about Adrian Cade than any orientation packet could have. She watched from the edges as he held court over 10 of the most dangerous-looking men she'd ever seen, all expensive suits and cold eyes, and the kind of casual menace that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. They talked in code, their conversation full of euphemisms and half-finished sentences that nevertheless painted a clear picture. Territory, distribution, enforcement, problem-solving that definitely didn't involve lawyers or mediation. Adrian sat at the head of the table like a king holding court, his voice calm and his decisions absolute. He didn't raise his voice once, but every man in that room deferred to him with the kind of respect that came from genuine fear. And when one of them, a thick-necked man with a Brooklyn accent, questioned a decision, Adrian's response was so quiet Lena almost didn't hear it. "Tommy, I'm going to give you one chance to rethink that question." Tommy went pale. "Sorry, boss, I was just... You were just what?" "Nothing. The decision's solid. My mistake." Adrian held his gaze for another moment, then smiled, a cold, empty expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Glad we understand each other." The rest of the dinner proceeded smoothly. Lena served each course with invisible efficiency, refilling drinks and clearing plates without once interrupting the conversation. It was a skill she'd perfected at the Marriott, the art of being present but unnoticed, helpful but not intrusive. She was clearing the dessert plates when one of Adrian's guests caught her wrist. "Hey, sweetheart." The man who'd grabbed her had slicked back hair and cologne that smelled like he'd bathed in it. His grip was too tight, his smile too familiar. "You got a name?" "Lena," she said evenly, trying to pull her wrist free without making a scene. Lena, pretty. You work here full-time, Lena? Yes, sir. Lucky boss. His thumb pressed against her pulse point, and Lena's stomach turned. You ever get lonely in a big place like this? Maybe want some company after work? Before Lena could formulate a polite refusal, a hand clamped down on the man's shoulder. Adrian's voice was soft, deadly. Vincent, let go of my housekeeper. Vincent released her wrist immediately, his face going slack with fear. Sorry, Adrian, I was just being friendly. Were you? Yeah, just, making conversation. Make conversation with someone else. Adrian's grip on Vincent's shoulder tightened until the other man winced. Ms. Carter is off limits, to you, to everyone at this table, to anyone who works for me or does business with me. Are we clear? Crystal clear, boss. My apologies. Adrian released him and turned to Lena. Are you all right? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Go take a break. His tone was still cold, but something in his eyes had shifted, something that looked almost like concern. I'll handle the rest of the cleanup. Lena didn't argue. She retreated to the kitchen and stood at the sink, her wrist still tingling where Vincent had grabbed her, her mind racing. Adrian Cade was a criminal. That much was obvious now, if it hadn't been before. The kind of criminal who commanded absolute loyalty and didn't hesitate to use violence to maintain control. But he'd also just defended her without hesitation. Lena didn't know what to do with that information. She was still processing when Adrian appeared in the kitchen doorway an hour later. His guest had left, and he'd loosened his tie, the first sign of anything resembling casualness she'd seen from him. They're gone, he said. You can come out of hiding. I wasn't hiding, I was just giving you privacy. Right. Adrian moved to the coffee maker, already becoming a habit, Lena noticed, and started a fresh pot. You handled tonight well. Most people get nervous around my associates. I'm used to working around difficult people. Difficult? He laughed, a short, humorless sound. That's diplomatic. Lena watched him pour 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted one, sliding one across the counter to her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, she said, for what you did with Vincent. You work for me. That means you're under my protection. Adrian took a sip of coffee, his eyes steady on hers. No one touches you. No one threatens you. No one makes you uncomfortable. Understood? Understood. Good. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Can I ask you something? Lena said before she could stop herself. Adrian's eyebrows rose. You can ask. I might not answer. Why do you live like this? Like what? Lena gestured around them. Like you're the only person in the world. This place is gorgeous, but it's empty. You have all this space and all this money, and you're just alone. Alone is safer, Adrian said simply. Alone means no one can betray you. No one can disappoint you. No one can use your weaknesses against you. Sounds lonely. Lonely is better than dead. The finality in his voice killed any response Lena might have had. She sipped her coffee and told herself it was none of her business how Adrian Cade chose to live his life. But later, lying in her bed in the staff quarters, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said it. Lonely is better than dead, like he'd learned that lesson the hard way. The next 6 weeks fell into a rhythm. Adrian kept brutal hours, leaving before dawn most days, returning late at night, sometimes not coming home at all. When he was there, he was distant and demanding, his expectations impossibly high, and his patience non-existent. But Lena learned his patterns, learned that he took his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar, learned that he hated small talk but would tolerate efficient conversation if it saved time, learned that he ate breakfast at 6, lunch never, and dinner at 8 when he was home, learned that on Tuesdays he met with his accountant, Wednesdays his lawyer, and Thursdays someone named Dimitri who made even Marcus look nervous. She learned to be invisible when Adrian was on the phone, to have aspirin and water waiting when he came home with fresh bruises, to never ask questions about the bloodstains she occasionally had to scrub out of his clothes. And slowly, grudgingly, she learned that Adrian Cade was more complicated than she'd given him credit for. He was ruthless, that was undeniable. She'd overheard enough phone conversations to know that he solved problems with violence and ran his empire with an iron fist. But he was also meticulous about his obligations, paid his staff generously and on time, made sure Marcus's daughter got the medical treatment she needed when her insurance denied coverage, quietly donated to the hospital that had treated Lena's mother, though he never mentioned it, and she only found out by accident when the development director called to thank him. He was a walking contradiction, and Lena couldn't figure him out. She also couldn't stop noticing him. It started innocently enough, professional observation, nothing more. Noticing that he favored his left side when he walked after particularly rough nights. Noticing the tension in his shoulders when certain names came up in conversation. Noticing the way his hands were scarred from what looked like years of fighting, the knuckles thick and calloused. Then she started noticing other things. The way his jaw tightened when he was trying not to react to something. The rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face when he was pleased with how something turned out. The intelligence in his eyes, sharp and calculating, but occasionally softened by something that looked almost like loneliness. The fact that he was objectively speaking one of the most attractive men she'd ever seen. Lena tried to ignore that last part. She failed. "You're staring," Adrian said one morning, startling her out of her thoughts. Lena blinked, realizing she'd been watching him read the financial section while his breakfast went cold. "Sorry, I was just... Do you want me to reheat your eggs?" "They're fine." He set down the paper and studied her with that unnerving intensity he always brought to everything. "You've been here 6 weeks. 7 tomorrow. 7 weeks, and you haven't quit. Did you expect me to? Everyone else does." Adrian picked up his coffee mug, his fingers wrapping around it in a way that drew her attention to the scars on his hands again. "Why haven't you?" "I need the money," Lena said honestly. "And you pay well. That's the only reason?" She hesitated, trying to figure out what he wanted to hear, then decided honesty was probably safer than whatever game he was playing. "You're not as bad as you think you are," she said quietly. "You're demanding and you have no sense of boundaries and your people skills could use some work. But you're fair. You keep your word. And you haven't once made me feel unsafe here, which is more than I can say for a lot of places I've worked." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, softened maybe, or maybe she was imagining it. "I'm not a good man, Lena. I didn't say you were good. I said you were fair. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." She started clearing his plate, needing something to do with her hands. "Good people aren't always fair, and fair people aren't always good. You're the second one. Maybe that's enough." She didn't see his reaction because she'd already turned toward the kitchen, but she felt his eyes on her back the entire way. That night, Lena came home to find a check on her bed. $5,000, made out to Columbia Memorial Hospital. The memo line read, "M. Carter, final bill payment." Lena stared at it for a long moment, her throat tight. Then she found Adrian in his office, working through a stack of contracts with the kind of focus he brought to everything. "You didn't have to do this," she said, holding up the check. Adrian didn't look up from the contract he was reviewing. "Your mother's medical debt was preventing you from saving money. Now it's not. Problem solved." "Adrian, it's a business decision." He signed the bottom of the contract with quick, decisive strokes. "Happy employees are productive employees. Consider it an investment in my own convenience." Lena knew that was bullshit. Knew that whatever this was, kindness, manipulation, some combination of both, it had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the complicated man sitting behind that desk, pretending he didn't care. "Thank you," she said softly. Adrian's pen stilled for just a moment. Then he nodded once and went back to his contracts, dismissing her. But when Lena left the office, she could have sworn she saw the ghost of a smile on his face. By week 10, something had fundamentally shifted between them. Adrian still kept his distance, still maintained the wall between employer and employee. But there were cracks in the foundation now, small moments that felt almost like friendship. Coffee at 2 a.m. when they both couldn't sleep, sitting in companionable silence while Manhattan glittered below them. Adrian asking her opinion on a new restaurant he was considering investing in, actually listening to her answer. The way he'd started saying good morning instead of just grunting acknowledgement. Lena told herself it didn't mean anything. Told herself she wasn't developing feelings for her criminally inclined boss with trust issues and a tendency toward violence. Told herself the flutter in her chest when he smiled at her was just caffeine. She was a terrible liar, even to herself. "You seem happy," Marcus observed one afternoon while helping her carry groceries up from the delivery entrance. "I'm fine," Lena said automatically. "That's not what I said." Marcus set down the bags and gave her a look that was equal parts concerned and warning. "You're settling in, getting comfortable. That's dangerous in this world." "It's just a job, Marcus." "Is it?" Lena's hand stilled on the bag of produce she'd been unpacking. "What are you asking me?" "I'm asking if you're smart enough to remember what I told you on your first day." Marcus's voice was low, serious. "Don't get curious. Don't try to fix him. And definitely don't think you're special." "I don't. He looks at you different than he looks at everyone else." Marcus cut her off gently. "I've worked for Adrian for 8 years. I've never seen him pay attention to anyone the way he pays attention to you. And that's a problem." "Why?" "Because men like Adrian don't know how to care about people without destroying them. It's not his fault. It's what this life made him. But it's true. So whatever you're feeling, whatever you think might be happening between you two, stop it now before someone gets hurt." He left before Lena could respond. She spent the rest of the afternoon trying to convince herself that Marcus was wrong, that she wasn't falling for Adrian, that this was still just a job and nothing more. Then Adrian came home at 7 instead of midnight, took one look at the dinner she'd prepared and said, "This is my mother's recipe." "How did you know?" And Lena realized she'd been studying him the same way he'd been studying her, learning his preferences, his patterns, the small things that made him human beneath all that armor. "Lucky guess," she lied. Adrian didn't look convinced, but he sat down and ate every bite, and when he thanked her, his voice was rough with something that sounded dangerously close to emotion. That night, Lena made a decision. She went online and researched community college programs in accounting and business management. Found one that offered night classes designed for working adults. The tuition would wipe out her first 3 months of savings, but it would be worth it. Because Marcus was right. This couldn't last. She couldn't stay in Adrian's orbit forever, couldn't keep pretending that her growing feelings for him weren't a disaster waiting to happen. So she'd use his money to build herself a future. Would get her degree, get a real career, get out before whatever was developing between them could combust. It was the smart play, the safe play. Lena enrolled in classes starting the following Monday. She didn't tell Adrian. That, as it turned out, was her first mistake. The lies started small. Monday night, Lena told Adrian she had a dentist appointment and would be back by 9. She actually sat in a cramped classroom at Manhattan Community College, surrounded by other exhausted adults trying to better their circumstances, and learned about basic accounting principles from a professor who spoke too fast and assumed everyone already knew what debits and credits were. Wednesday, she claimed the grocery store was doing inventory again. Instead, she spent 2 hours learning about financial statement analysis and taking notes so frantically her hand cramped. Friday, she said she was meeting an old friend for dinner. She was actually in the library, hunched over a statistics textbook, trying to understand probability distributions while her brain screamed for sleep. It should have been easy. Adrian kept irregular hours, often working late or traveling for business. He told her multiple times he didn't care what she did on her own time as long as she showed up when expected. Except he'd also told her everything she did was his business. And Adrian Cade didn't miss details. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks into Lena's secret academic career. She was making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy because she'd been up until 2, finishing an assignment and couldn't handle anything more complicated, when Adrian walked into the kitchen earlier than usual. He looked tired. More than tired, actually. There were dark circles under his eyes and a fresh bruise along his jaw that he hadn't bothered to cover up. "You look like hell," Lena said before she could stop herself. Adrian's mouth twitched. "Good morning to you too." "Sorry, Are you okay?" "I'm fine." He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching her plate the eggs with the intensity he brought to everything. "Rough night. Do you want to talk about it?" "No." "Okay." Lena set his plate on the counter since he didn't seem inclined to move to the dining room. "Eat anyway. You'll feel better." "Since when are you my mother?" "Since you started looking like you're about to fall over." She pushed the plate closer to him. "Eat, Adrian." He picked up the fork, but his eyes stayed on her face. "You look tired too." Lena's stomach tightened. "I'm fine."
You've got circles under your eyes. You're drinking more coffee than usual, and you keep zoning out when you think I'm not looking. Adrian took a bite of eggs, still watching her. What's going on? Nothing. Just not sleeping well. Why not? I don't know. Stress, I guess.
What are you stressed about? His tone was casual, but there was an edge underneath it, something sharp and suspicious. Is someone bothering you? One of my people make you uncomfortable? No, nothing like that. I'm just... Lena scrambled for a plausible lie. I've been thinking about my mom a lot lately. Some nights are harder than others. It wasn't entirely untrue. She did think about her mother, especially when she was struggling through her homework and wishing she had someone to ask for help. Adrian's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. It's fine. It is what it is. They ate in silence for a moment, the only sound the quiet scrape of forks against plates. You'd tell me if something was wrong, Adrian said finally. It wasn't quite a question. Lena met his eyes and lied directly to his face. Of course. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Just finished his breakfast, thanked her quietly, and disappeared into his office for a string of calls that lasted most of the day. Lena told herself she'd dodged a bullet. She was wrong. That night, Marcus stopped her as she was leaving for class, though she told Adrian she was running to the pharmacy. Mr. Cade wants to see you in his office, Marcus said, his expression carefully neutral. Lena's heart jumped into her throat. Did he say why? No, but you should probably go now. She found Adrian behind his desk, his laptop open in front of him, but his attention focused entirely on the door as she walked through it. The look on his face made her stomach drop. Close the door, he said quietly. Lena did, her palms suddenly sweaty. Is everything okay? That depends. Are you going to keep lying to me, or are we going to have an honest conversation? The air left her lungs. I don't. Adrian's voice was soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. I've given you 3 weeks to tell me the truth. You haven't. So now we're going to do this the hard way. He turned his laptop around so she could see the screen. It showed a grainy surveillance photo of Lena walking into Manhattan Community College, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her hair pulled back in a ponytail. I have 6 more of these, Adrian said, his tone conversational. Different nights, same location. Want to explain what you're doing at a college when you told me you were at the dentist, or the grocery store, or meeting a friend? Lena's mind raced. She could keep lying, but what was the point? He clearly already knew. I'm taking classes, she said quietly. Accounting and business management. Night program for working adults. Classes. Adrian repeated the word like it tasted wrong. You're taking classes. Yes. And you didn't think to mention this because it's my business. The words came out sharper than she intended, fueled by equal parts fear and frustration. You said what I do on my own time is my own time. I also said everything you do is my business, Adrian shot back, especially when you're sneaking around behind my back and lying to my face about where you're going. I wasn't sneaking. You lied to me multiple times about where you were, what you were doing, who you were with. He stood up slowly, deliberately, his hands braced on the desk. Do you have any idea how that looks? Do you understand what I thought was happening? Lena stared at him, confusion cutting through her fear. What you thought? What are you talking about? I thought you were seeing someone. The admission came out rough, like he hadn't meant to say it. I thought you were using this job as cover, while you ran around with some guy you didn't want me to know about. For a moment, Lena could only gape at him. Then the absurdity of the accusation hit her all over again, and something inside her snapped. Are you serious right now? She crossed her arms over her chest, anger replacing fear. You had me followed because you thought I was dating someone? I didn't have you followed. I have people watching the building for security purposes. They noticed you leaving at consistent times and returning late. I asked them to verify your location. That's the same thing. It's my job to know where threats are coming from. I'm not a threat. I'm your housekeeper. You're someone I trusted. Adrian's voice dropped dangerously low. Someone I let into my home, my space, my life. And you repaid that trust by lying to me for 3 weeks straight. About going to school, Lena threw her hands up in frustration. I lied about going to school, Adrian, not about stealing from you or selling your secrets or screwing someone behind your back. I'm trying to better my life, and somehow you've turned that into a betrayal. You should have told me. Why? So you could control that too? The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Is that what this is about? You can't stand the idea that I'm doing something you don't have complete oversight of? Adrian's jaw tightened. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're pissed off that I have a life outside of making your breakfast and cleaning your house. I'm pissed off because I thought... He stopped abruptly, like he'd caught himself before saying too much. You thought what? Adrian turned away from her, staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline. His shoulders were rigid with tension, his hands clenched at his sides. Nothing, he said finally. Forget it. No. Lena moved closer, emboldened by anger and exhaustion and weeks of walking on eggshells around him. You don't get to do that. You don't get to accuse me of betraying you and then refuse to explain why you're so upset. You want to know why? Adrian spun back around, and the raw emotion in his eyes stopped her cold. Because for 3 weeks, I've been losing my mind thinking you were with someone else. Thinking about some other man getting your time, your attention, your smiles. Lying awake wondering who the hell he was and what he had that I don't. The confession hit Lena like a physical blow. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to process what he'd just admitted. Adrian, she said carefully, I'm your employee. You're my boss. That's all this is. Is it? He moved closer, and Lena's breath caught at the intensity in his gaze. Because it hasn't felt like just a job for a while now, and I think you know that. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This is a bad idea. Probably the worst idea I've ever had. I work for you. I know. You're a criminal. I'm aware. This can't happen. But even as she said it, Lena found herself unable to step back, unable to look away from the man standing in front of her with his defenses finally, catastrophically down. Tell me you don't feel it, Adrian said quietly. Tell me I'm imagining this and I'll back off. I'll pretend this conversation never happened. But if you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, I need to know. Lena's mind screamed at her to lie. To protect herself, to maintain boundaries, to remember Marcus's warning about not thinking she was special. But her heart had other ideas. I feel it, she whispered, and it terrifies me. Adrian closed the distance between them in 2 steps. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. It terrifies me too, he admitted. I've spent my entire adult life making sure I never cared about anyone, never let anyone close enough to matter. And then you walked in making perfect coffee at 2 a.m, and suddenly I can't remember why being alone was supposed to be safer. Adrian, we can't, I know. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and Lena felt the tension radiating through his body. I know all the reasons this is wrong. I've listed them to myself 1,000 times, but I can't make myself care about any of them when you're this close. Lena's hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. What do we do? I don't know. Adrian pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. But I need you to promise me something. What? No more lies. I don't care if you're taking classes or joining a book club or learning to skydive. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, I need to know. Not because I want to control you, but because not knowing is killing me. That's not fair. I never said I was fair. His hand slid into her hair, and Lena's breath caught. I said I was honest. So here's the truth. I'm possessive, I'm jealous, and I have absolutely no idea how to care about someone without trying to control them. You deserve better than what I can give you, but I'm too selfish to let you go. Lena should have run, should have packed her bags and gotten as far from Adrian Cade as possible. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm taking night classes 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I should be done by 8:30, home by 9. I'm trying to get my degree so I can have a real career and not just drift from job to job for the rest of my life. Why didn't you just tell me that from the beginning? Because I didn't think you'd let me. Adrian's expression shifted, hurt maybe, or something close to it. Have I ever stopped you from doing anything you wanted to do? No, Lena admitted, but you make it very clear that you expect complete control over your environment. I didn't know how you'd react to me having something that was mine. I would have supported it. His voice was rough. I would have adjusted your schedule, made sure you had time to study. Hell, I would have paid for the classes if you'd asked. I don't want you to pay for my classes. I want to do this myself. Why? Because if I let you pay for it, then it becomes yours too. And I need something in my life that's just mine. Something I earned without your money or your influence. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. I can understand that. Really? Really? He stepped back, putting space between them that felt wrong but necessary. Go to your classes. Build your future. I won't interfere. But no more lying about where you are. That's non-negotiable. Okay, Lena agreed. No more lying. And Lena? Adrian's eyes met hers, and the vulnerability in them made her chest ache. If there ever is someone else, someone who makes you happy, someone who can give you a normal life, tell me. Don't let me find out from surveillance photos. The thought of being with anyone else felt wrong in a way Lena couldn't quite articulate. But she nodded anyway, because what else could she do? Adrian dismissed her with a nod, and she escaped to her room on shaking legs. She'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross, had admitted feelings she should have kept buried, had made promises to a man who was dangerous in ways she was only beginning to understand. And the worst part was that she didn't regret it, not even a little bit. The following week felt different, charged, like the air before a storm. Adrian didn't touch her again, didn't push for anything beyond their normal professional interactions. But something fundamental had shifted. He asked about her classes, not intrusively, just casual questions about what she was learning, if the professor was decent, whether she needed a quieter space to study. He started timing his evening returns so he was home when she got back from school, always with some excuse about wanting a late dinner or needing to review contracts. He bought her textbooks when he noticed her using ancient editions from the library, waving off her protests with a curt, "It's a business expense. You're technically using them to improve your value as an employee." It was the worst kind of torture. Being this close to him, feeling the pull between them grow stronger every day, and knowing they couldn't act on it without destroying everything. Lena threw herself into her coursework, using studying as a shield against feelings she couldn't afford to examine too closely. But late at night, when she was exhausted and her defenses were down, she'd find herself thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her in his office, the way his voice had cracked when he'd admitted he was terrified too, the way it had felt, for just a moment, like she wasn't alone in this. It was Marcus who finally forced the issue. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said one afternoon, cornering her in the kitchen while Adrian was at a meeting across town. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lena replied, though her hands shook slightly as she chopped vegetables. "Yes, you do." Marcus leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "I've seen the way you look at each other, the way he hovers around you like he can't stand to have you out of his sight, the way you light up when he walks into a room, even when you're trying to hide it." "Marcus, I'm not judging," he said quietly. "I'm warning you." Adrian doesn't know how to be in a relationship. He doesn't know how to trust or compromise or let someone be their own person. He's going to suffocate you with his need for control, and when you fight back, he's going to push you away rather than deal with his own issues. You don't know that. I've worked for him for 8 years. I know exactly how this ends. Marcus's expression was sympathetic but firm. He cares about you. I can see that. But caring about someone isn't the same as being good for them, and Adrian Cade is not good for you. The knife stilled in Lena's hand. Then what am I supposed to do? Walk away? Pretend I don't feel anything? Yes. I can't. Then you're going to get hurt. Marcus pushed off the counter, heading for the door. And when you do, don't say I didn't warn you. He left, and Lena stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the vegetables she'd been cutting without really seeing them. Marcus was right. She knew he was right. But knowing something intellectually and being able to act on it were two very different things. That night, Adrian came home at 7 with takeout from her favorite Thai place, the one she'd mentioned once, weeks ago, in passing. He set the bags on the counter and looked at her expectantly. "I thought you might want a break from cooking," he said. Lena's throat tightened. "You remembered." "I remember everything you tell me." Adrian started unpacking containers, his movements efficient but somehow uncertain. Is this okay? Or did you have other plans? No plans. This is... Thank you. They ate at the counter instead of the formal dining room, talking about nothing important. Her midterm coming up, a property deal Adrian was working on, the ridiculous plot of a movie she'd watched last weekend. It was comfortable, easy, the kind of evening Lena could imagine having 1,000 more times, if circumstances were different, if they were different people living different lives. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, startling her out of her thoughts. Nothing, just tired. Liar. But there was no heat in the accusation, just quiet observation. You get this look on your face when you're overthinking something, like you're trying to solve a problem you can't quite figure out. Maybe I am. Want to talk about it? Lena set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. Marcus thinks this is a bad idea. This? Us. Whatever this is. Adrian's expression shuddered slightly. What do you think? I think he's probably right. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I think you and I are fundamentally incompatible in ways that matter. I think getting involved would be complicated and messy and probably end badly. Probably, Adrian agreed, but I can't stop wanting it anyway. Something fierce and raw flashed across his face. Lena, I know it's stupid. I know I should be smarter than this, but I'm not, apparently. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. I'm falling for my criminally inclined boss who has trust issues and a jealous streak a mile wide. That's where I'm at. Adrian stood slowly and moved around the counter until he was standing in front of her. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to be with someone without trying to own them. I don't know how to trust or let go or be vulnerable. I'm going to mess this up, probably more than once. I know. And you still want to try? Lena's heart hammered. This was it. The moment where she either protected herself or took a leap into something that would probably destroy her. Yes, she whispered. I still want to try. Adrian kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and claiming, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks and finally couldn't anymore. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and Lena responded without thinking, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body pressing against his. She'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this level of intensity, like the person kissing her was drowning and she was air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Tell me this is real, he said roughly. Tell me I'm not imagining this. It's real. Lena's hands were shaking. I'm terrified, but it's real. Good. He pulled her closer, and she felt his heart racing against her chest. Because I'm terrified too, and I need to know I'm not the only one taking this risk. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped around each other in the middle of Adrian's pristine kitchen, both knowing they'd just stepped off a cliff with no idea where they'd land. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next morning, Lena woke up to find Adrian already awake, sitting in the chair by her bed and watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. That's creepy, she mumbled, her voice rough with sleep. Sorry. But he didn't move. I wanted to make sure you were still here. Where else would I be? I don't know. Part of me thought you might come to your senses and run. Lena pushed herself up on her elbows, studying him in the early morning light. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept at all. Did you stay up all night watching me sleep? She asked. Only part of the night. Adrian, I know. I told you I don't know how to do this. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I meant what I said last night, about not knowing how to be with someone without trying to own them. I'm already failing at the give you space thing. We're going to have to set some boundaries, Lena said gently. I know. I'm serious. You can't just watch me sleep like some kind of vampire. That's not romantic. That's concerning. Adrian's mouth twitched despite the tension. Noted. And you can't track my every movement or interrogate me about where I'm going or treat me like I'm going to disappear the second you take your eyes off me. That's going to be harder. Try anyway. She reached out, and after a moment's hesitation, he took her hand. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian, but you have to trust me. Actually, Trust me, not just say you do while secretly having me followed. I'll try. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But you have to understand, trust doesn't come naturally to me. It's not something I've ever been able to afford. Then we'll work on it together. But if this is going to work, you have to meet me halfway. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I can do that. Lena knew it wouldn't be that simple, knew that his jealousy and control issues weren't going to disappear overnight. But she also saw the genuine effort in his eyes, the way he was trying, despite every instinct, screaming at him to lock her down and keep her close. It was a start. Over the following weeks, they developed a rhythm, tentative and imperfect, but theirs. Adrian still struggled with boundaries, still fought the urge to know her every move. But he was trying, and that mattered. He started asking instead of demanding. Would check in with her about her schedule rather than tracking her through surveillance. Would tell her when he was feeling anxious about where she was instead of silently spiraling. It wasn't perfect. They argued about his need for control, about her tendency to keep things to herself, about the fundamental incompatibility of their worlds. But they also laughed, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing, found ways to exist together that felt natural despite the impossibility of their situation. Lena learned that Adrian was funny when he let his guard down, that he had strong opinions about architecture and terrible taste in action movies, that he'd wanted to be a civil engineer before circumstances had dragged him into his father's world. Adrian learned that Lena sang off-key in the shower, that she organized everything by color because it made her feel in control of her chaotic life, that she'd dreamed of owning her own business someday, but had never imagined it would be possible. They were building something fragile and complicated and entirely their own, which made it hurt that much more when everything fell apart. It started with a phone call Adrian took in his office, his door closed and his voice too low for Lena to hear. She thought nothing of it. He took dozens of private calls every day, until Marcus appeared in the kitchen looking grim. "We have a situation," he said without preamble. Lena's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where you need to pack a bag and be ready to move in the next hour." "What? Why?" "Can't explain right now. Just trust me." Marcus glanced over his shoulder, tense. "Adrian's dealing with it, but until we know more, you're a potential target." "Target for what?" Before Marcus could answer, Adrian's voice cut through the apartment, sharp with command. "Marcus, my office, now!" Marcus left without another word, and Lena stood alone in the kitchen, her mind racing. Target, situation, pack a bag. Nothing about that was good. She'd known, intellectually, that being with Adrian came with risks, that his world was dangerous and violent and full of people who'd use any weakness against him. But knowing it and experiencing it were very different things. Lena was still standing frozen in the kitchen when Adrian appeared, his expression harder than she'd seen in weeks. All business, no trace of the man who'd held her close and whispered that she made him want to be better. "We need to talk," he said. And Lena knew, with cold certainty, that everything was about to change. Adrian's office felt smaller than usual, colder. Lena stood near the door while he paced behind his desk, his phone pressed to his ear, and his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying, his voice deadly calm. "Find out who leaked it and deal with them. No, I don't want excuses. I want results by midnight." He ended the call and threw the phone onto his desk hard enough that Lena flinched at the crack of it hitting wood. "Adrian, what's going on?" He didn't answer right away, just stood there with his hands braced on the desk, his head bowed, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Someone knows about you," he said finally. Lena's blood turned to ice. "Knows what about me?" "That you matter to me." Adrian looked up, and the raw fear in his eyes made her stomach twist. "Someone inside my organization has been feeding information to the Volkov family. They know you live here. They know we're involved. And they're going to use that against me." "The Volkov family?" "Russian mob. They've been trying to move in on my territory for the past 6 months. So far, I've held them off. But if they think they can get to me through you..." He trailed off, his jaw clenched so tight Lena could see the muscle jumping. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're in danger because of me. Because I was stupid enough to let myself care about someone, and now they know exactly where to hit me to make it hurt." The words landed like a physical blow. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, trying to process what he was telling her. "So what do we do?" she asked quietly. "I'm moving you to a safe house. Marcus will take you tonight. Stay with you until this is resolved." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." "Adrian, I have classes. I have a midterm next week." "Forget the classes." His voice was sharp, brooking no argument. "Your life is more important than a midterm." "Don't do that," Lena said, anger cutting through her fear. "Don't make unilateral decisions about my life without even asking what I think." "I'm not asking, Lena. I'm telling you, you're leaving tonight." "And what if I say no?" Adrian moved around the desk so fast she didn't have time to react. His hands gripped her shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "Then I'll carry you out of here myself," he said roughly. "I will not lose you because you're too stubborn to see the danger you're in." "I'm not stupid. I understand that this is serious, but you don't get to lock me away like some possession you're protecting." Lena met his eyes, refusing to back down. "We're supposed to be partners. That means you talk to me, not at me." "There's nothing to talk about. The decision is made." "Then unmake it." She grabbed his wrists, her fingers digging in. "I'm scared, okay? I'm terrified." "But running away and hiding isn't going to make this better. It's just going to give whoever's after you more time to plan." "You don't understand what these people are capable of." "You're right, I don't. So explain it to me. Tell me what we're dealing with instead of just barking orders and expecting me to fall in line." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his hands slid from her shoulders and he stepped back, running both hands through his hair. "The Volkovs don't play nice," he said finally. "If they want to send a message, they'll kidnap you, hurt you, maybe kill you, depending on how angry I make them. And they'll make sure I know exactly what they're doing to you every step of the way." Lena's mouth went dry. "Okay, that's terrifying. That's why you need to leave. Or," she said carefully, "we figure out who the leak is and deal with them before the Volkovs can make a move. I already have people working on that." "Then let me stay until you find them. If you send me away now, aren't you just confirming that I'm important to you? Doesn't that make the target on my back even bigger?" Adrian's expression shifted, surprise maybe, or reluctant respect. "You've been thinking about this?" "I've had 5 minutes. It's not exactly a comprehensive strategy." Lena moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. "But I know that splitting up when we're both scared and vulnerable isn't the answer. I know that I'd rather face this with you than hide in some safe house wondering if you're okay." "Lena, I'm not leaving unless you're coming with me," she said firmly. "So either we both disappear until this is over, or we stay and fight together. Those are the options." Adrian caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. "You're asking me to put you in danger." "I'm asking you to trust that I can handle myself, that I'm strong enough to stand beside you instead of hiding behind you." For a moment she thought he might argue, might insist on doing things his way regardless of what she wanted. Then he pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her tightly enough that she could barely breathe. "If anything happens to you because I was too selfish to send you away," he said against her hair, "I'll never forgive myself." "Then don't let anything happen to me." Lena held him just as tightly. "We'll be careful, we'll be smart, and we'll get through this together." She felt him nod, his grip on her not loosening. They stood like that until Marcus knocked on the door, his voice urgent. "Boss, we've got a situation." Adrian released Lena reluctantly and opened the door. Marcus looked grim, holding a tablet that he handed over without a word. Adrian's face went white as he looked at the screen, then red, then back to white again, all emotion draining away until his expression was a mask of cold fury. "What is it?" Lena asked. Adrian turned the tablet so she could see. It was a photo of her. Walking out of Manhattan Community College, her backpack over her shoulder and her phone in her hand. The date stamp showed it was from 2 nights ago. Below the photo was a message in Russian. Lena didn't speak the language, but she didn't need to. The meaning was clear from the context and Adrian's reaction. "They sent this to your personal phone?" Marcus asked. 20 minutes ago." Adrian's voice was ice. "Along with her class schedule, her route home, and the names of everyone in her study group." Lena's knees went weak. "How do they have all that information?"
Because whoever's feeding them intel has been watching you for weeks. Adrian handed the tablet back to Marcus. Get Dimitri.
Tell him I want every single person with access to building security footage in a room within the hour. And tell him to bring his tools. Boss? Now, Marcus. Marcus left without another word. Adrian turned back to Lena, and the look on his face made her step back instinctively. I need you to go to your room and stay there, he said quietly. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Marcus. Understand? Adrian, what are you going to do? What I should have done the moment I realized there was a leak in my organization. His eyes were cold, empty of everything except lethal focus. I'm going to find out who betrayed me, and I'm going to make sure they never betray anyone again. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could help, that she didn't need to be locked away like a child. But the man standing in front of her wasn't the Adrian who'd held her close and admitted he was terrified. This was someone else entirely, someone capable of extreme violence, someone who'd built an empire on fear and control, someone dangerous. Okay, she said softly. I'll go to my room. Something in Adrian's expression softened fractionally. He reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I'm sorry you're seeing this side of me, he said. I know it's not pretty. I knew what you were when I decided to stay. Knowing and seeing are different things. I'm still here, aren't I? Lena covered his hand with hers. Go do what you need to do, but Adrian, don't become someone you'll hate when this is over. He didn't promise her anything, just kissed her forehead and watched as she left the office. Lena made it to her room on shaking legs and locked the door like he'd asked. Then she sat on her bed and tried not to think about what was happening in other parts of the penthouse. She failed. The sound started around 8 p.m., raised voices, though too muffled for her to make out words. A crash that might have been furniture. More voices, sharper now, and then a scream that cut off abruptly. Lena pressed her hands over her ears and tried to focus on her accounting textbook, but the words swam meaninglessly across the page. This was her life now. This was what she'd signed up for when she'd refused to leave. She told herself she could handle it. She almost believed herself. The knock on her door came just after 11. Lena jumped at the sound, her heart in her throat. It's me, Adrian said from the other side. Can I come in? She unlocked the door with trembling hands. Adrian looked exhausted. There was blood on his shirt, not much, just a few spatters across the collar, and his knuckles were bruised and split. But his eyes were calm again, the cold fury replaced by something closer to resignation. Did you find them? Lena asked. Yeah, we found them. He stepped into her room and closed the door behind him, leaning against it like he needed the support. It was James, one of my senior people. He's been with me for 5 years. Why would he betray you? The Volkovs offered him money and protection, promised to set him up in Miami, let him retire wealthy. Adrian's laugh was bitter. He sold me out for a beach house and a pension plan. What did you do to him? You don't want to know. Lena swallowed hard. Is he dead? Not yet, but he will be by morning. Adrian met her eyes, and there was no apology in his gaze. I can't let that kind of betrayal stand. If I do, everyone will think they can sell me out without consequences. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that there had to be another way, that violence and murder weren't the answer. But she'd lived in Adrian's world long enough to know that his rules weren't her rules, that mercy in his world was the same as weakness. I'm not going to tell you how to run your business, she said quietly. But I need you to be honest with me. No sugarcoating, no protecting me from the ugly parts. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, I need to know exactly who you are. All of you, not just the parts you think I can handle. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he moved to sit on her bed, patting the space beside him. Lena sat, close enough that their shoulders touched. I've killed people, Adrian said bluntly. Not as many as the rumors probably claim, but enough. I've ordered hits on rivals. I've tortured people for information. I've destroyed lives and families and businesses because they stood between me and what I wanted. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked for honesty. He looked down at his bruised hands. My father was in this business before me. He was brutal, paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. When I was 17, a rival organization kidnapped my mother to get to him. They kept her for 3 weeks. By the time my father paid the ransom and got her back, she was broken. She killed herself 6 months later. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, I'm so sorry. My father blamed himself, started making mistakes, trusting the wrong people, got sloppy. When he was killed 2 years later, I took over what was left of his operation and rebuilt it from the ground up. His voice was flat, emotionless. I promised myself I'd never make his mistakes, never trust anyone enough to be vulnerable, never care about anyone enough that they could be used against me. And then I came along. And then you came along, he agreed, making perfect coffee and arguing with me about semantics and looking at me like I was just a person instead of a monster. You terrified me from the beginning, Lena, because I knew that if I let myself care about you, I'd be giving my enemies exactly what they needed to destroy me. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Adrian finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. Because you made me want to be someone different, someone who could have normal things like relationships and trust, and a future that wasn't just about survival. Lena reached for his damaged hands, cradling them gently in hers. I'm not going anywhere. You should. You should run as far and fast as you can. I know, but I'm not going to. She lifted his hands to her lips, pressing a kiss to each set of bruised knuckles. So what do we do now? The Volkovs still know about me. Getting rid of your leak doesn't change that. No, Adrian admitted, but it buys us time to plan, to prepare, to make sure that if they come for you, we're ready. How do we prepare for something like that? I'm going to teach you how to protect yourself. Basic self-defense. How to spot when you're being followed. What to do if someone tries to grab you. His hands tightened on hers. And I'm going to make it very clear to the Volkovs that touching you would be the last mistake they ever make. That sounds like a declaration of war. It is. Adrian's smile was cold. They made this personal the moment they threatened you. Now they get to see what happens when someone makes that mistake. Lena should have been scared, should have been horrified by how easily he talked about violence and war. But all she felt was a fierce, protective love for this broken, dangerous man who was willing to burn the world down to keep her safe. We're going to get through this, she said firmly. You sound very sure of that. I am. Because you're ruthless and brilliant and you don't lose. And because I'm not going to let some Russian mobsters destroy what we're building. Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. How did I get this lucky? Lucky? Lena laughed against his chest. We're being threatened by the mob and you just spent the evening torturing a traitor. That's not most people's definition of lucky. Most people haven't met you. They held each other until Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression darkening. I have to go, he said reluctantly. Dmitri needs me to sign off on the cleanup. The cleanup? Trust me, you don't want details. He stood, then paused. Will you be okay here alone? I'll be fine. Marcus is still around, right? He's not going anywhere. Adrian hesitated, like there was something else he wanted to say. Then he just kissed her forehead and left. Lena sat in her room for a long time after he was gone, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. Her life had become something unrecognizable. She was in love with a criminal. She was being hunted by the Russian mob. She'd just tacitly accepted that someone was going to die because they'd betrayed the man she cared about. This wasn't the future she'd imagined when she'd first walked into Adrian's penthouse 4 months ago. Wasn't the life she'd planned when she'd enrolled in night classes to better herself? But somehow, impossibly, it felt right. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Lena was making breakfast, pancakes because she needed the comfort of routine, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Ms. Carter? The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a slight Russian accent that made her blood run cold. I hope I'm not disturbing your morning. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone with a message for Mr. Cade. Since he's been difficult to reach lately, I thought perhaps you could pass it along. I'm not passing along anything. Tell me who you are or I'm hanging up. My name is Viktor Volkov, and I'm calling to offer you an opportunity, Ms. Carter, one that could save your life. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced toward the hallway, wondering if she should call for Marcus. But something kept her on the line. What kind of opportunity? The opportunity to walk away from this situation before it becomes fatal. Victor's voice was smooth, almost friendly. You seem like an intelligent woman. Surely you've realized by now that Adrian Cade is not someone you want to be associated with. I'm hanging up now. Wait, please, just hear me out. He paused, and Lena could hear him moving, the sound of a door closing. I don't want to hurt you, Ms. Carter, truly. But Mr. Cade has been interfering with my business interests for far too long. Something needs to be done about that. Then do it. Leave me out of it. I would love to, but you've given me leverage I didn't have before. And in this business, leverage is everything. His tone shifted, harder now. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to provide me with information about Mr. Cade's movements, his meetings, his vulnerabilities, his blind spots. In exchange, I'll make sure no harm comes to you when this is over. You want me to betray him. I want you to survive. There's a difference. Lena's mind raced. She should hang up, should tell Adrian immediately, should never have answered this call in the first place. But a tiny, strategic part of her brain saw an opportunity. And if I refuse, she asked, then you'll be collateral damage when I make my move against Mr. Cade, a tragic casualty of a war you never should have been part of. Victor sighed, like he genuinely regretted the thought. You seem like a good person, Ms. Carter. It would be a shame to waste that. I need time to think about this. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires and we proceed without your cooperation. He paused. Oh, and Ms. Carter, if you tell Adrian about this call, the deal is off. I'll know if you do. I have eyes everywhere. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind spinning. Viktor Volkov had just tried to recruit her as a spy, had threatened her life while pretending to offer her an escape route, and he'd explicitly warned her not to tell Adrian, which meant telling Adrian was exactly what she needed to do. She found him in his office, already on his third cup of coffee despite the early hour. He looked up when she walked in, his expression softening. Morning. Pancakes smell good. Viktor Volkov just called me. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Adrian went very still. What did you say? He called my phone, offered me a deal. I give him information about your movements in exchange for my safety when he makes his move against you. And you told him? That I needed time to think about it. Lena sat down in the chair across from his desk. He gave me 24 hours and told me not to tell you about the call. Said he'd know if I did. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Do you believe him? That he has eyes everywhere? I don't know, but I figured you should know immediately, even if it ruins whatever game he's playing. You did the right thing. Adrian pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. This is actually good news. How is this good news? He just threatened my life. He confirmed that he doesn't have anyone else inside my organization. If he did, he wouldn't need you. Adrian looked up from his phone. And he gave us an opportunity. We can feed him false information through you. Set a trap. Lena's stomach twisted. You want me to actually do it? To pretend to work with him? Only if you're comfortable with it. I won't force you into danger. Adrian, the whole point of his call was to manipulate me into betraying you. He's not stupid. He'll know if I'm feeding him lies. Not if we make the lies believable. Adrian came around the desk and crouched in front of her chair, taking her hands. We give him small truths, things that make him think he's getting real intel. And we use that to figure out his timeline, his resources, his endgame. This sounds incredibly dangerous. It is, but it's also the best shot we have at ending this before more people get hurt. He searched her face. I'm not going to make you do this. If you want to walk away right now, I'll understand. Lena thought about Victor's smooth voice telling her she'd be collateral damage. Thought about Adrian's mother, kidnapped and broken and dead because someone had used her as leverage. Thought about the future she was trying to build with a man who probably shouldn't have mattered to her but did anyway. Tell me exactly what you want me to do, she said. Adrian's expression was a mixture of pride and fear. When Victor calls back, you tell him yes. You're scared, you want out, you'll help him in exchange for protection. Then you meet with him, somewhere public, somewhere we can monitor, and you give him information we've prepared in advance. What kind of information? Meeting locations that aren't real. Shipment schedules we've already changed. Names of people who don't exist. Adrian's grip tightened on her hands. Nothing that could actually hurt my operation, but enough to make him think he's getting value. And then what? Then we wait for him to make a move based on the false intel. When he does, we'll be ready. We'll take out his key people, cripple his operation, and make sure he never threatens you again. It sounded simple when Adrian explained it. Logical, almost safe. Lena knew it was anything but. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She managed a shaky smile. We're partners, right? Partners don't let each other face danger alone. Adrian pulled her into a fierce hug. I'm going to keep you safe, no matter what it takes. Lena held him just as tightly, trying not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. She'd just agreed to play spy against the Russian mob. Either she was incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, probably both. The 24 hours crawled by like 24 days. Adrian spent most of them with Dmitri and Marcus, crafting the perfect mix of truth and fiction to feed Viktor Volkov. Lena spent them trying not to throw up every time she thought about what she was about to do. When Viktor's call finally came, she was ready, or as ready as she'd ever be. Ms. Carter, Viktor said, his voice warm like they were old friends. Have you had time to consider my offer? Lena glanced at Adrian, who sat across from her with a listening device pressed to his ear. He nodded once, encouraging. I'll do it, she said, hating how her voice shook. But I need your word that you won't hurt me, or Adrian. I just want out of this whole mess. You have my word, though I'm afraid I can't promise Mr. Cade's safety. That depends entirely on how cooperative he chooses to be. Viktor paused. Tell me, what changed your mind? I saw what he did to the last person who betrayed him. The lie came easier than expected. I can't end up like that. I'm not cut out for this world. No, I don't imagine you are. Viktor sounded genuinely sympathetic. You deserve better than to be caught in the middle of our war. I'll make sure you get out safely. When do you want to meet? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. There's a cafe on the corner of Madison and 63rd, La Boheme. Do you know it? I'll find it. Come alone. If I see any of Mr. Cade's men, the deal is off. I understand. Lena's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the phone with both hands. What do you want to know? Tomorrow. We'll discuss everything tomorrow. Viktor's voice softened. You're doing the right thing, Ms. Carter. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you are. The line went dead. Lena set the phone down carefully and looked at Adrian. He bought it. You were perfect. Adrian pulled the listening device from his ear and stood, moving around the table to pull her into his arms. Scared enough to be believable, but not so scared that he'd question it. I wasn't acting, Lena admitted against his chest. I'm terrified. I know, but we're going to keep you safe. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Marcus will be in the cafe, 2 tables over. Dmitri will be outside in a car. I'll be listening to everything through a wire. If anything goes wrong, if you feel even slightly threatened, you say the word pancakes and we pull you out immediately. Pancakes? You mentioned making them this morning. It'll sound natural if you work it into conversation. Adrian's hands came up to frame her face. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. You understand that, right? I know you'll try. Not try. Will. His voice was fierce. Viktor Volkov has no idea who he's dealing with. He thinks you're just some scared housekeeper who got in over her head. He doesn't know that you're the strongest person I've ever met. Lena managed a weak smile. You're biased. Doesn't make it less true. Adrian kissed her, soft and sweet and entirely at odds with the violence simmering beneath his calm exterior. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Sleep was a joke. Lena lay awake most of the night, running through every possible scenario in her head. What if Viktor realized she was lying? What if he had people inside Adrian's organization after all and knew about the trap? What if something went wrong and she ended up dead in some cafe bathroom while Adrian listened helplessly through a wire? By the time morning came, she'd convinced herself this was a terrible idea approximately 50 times. But she got up anyway, showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater that looked casual but had been carefully chosen by Marcus, because the fabric wouldn't interfere with the wire. Let Dmitri tape the tiny microphone to her skin just below her collarbone, his hands professional and impersonal despite the intimacy of the act. Remember, Dmitri said in his heavy accent, you are scared girl who wants out, not spy, not actor, just scared, yes? Just scared, Lena repeated. I can do that. Good, because if you act like spy, Victor will know. And if Victor knows... Dmitri drew his finger across his throat in an unmistakable gesture. Very reassuring, thanks. Dmitri's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. You have balls, girl, is good. You will need them. Adrian drove her to within 2 blocks of the cafe, then made her promise one more time that she'd use the safe word if things went wrong. I mean it, Lena. Your safety is more important than any information we might get. I know. Say it back to me. My safety is more important than information. She touched his face, feeling the tension radiating through him. I'm going to be fine. We've prepared for this. Preparing and executing are different things. Then I guess we'll find out if I'm as strong as you think I am. Lena leaned in and kissed him, trying to pour every ounce of feeling into it, just in case. Adrian held her like he might never let go. Then, with visible effort, he released her. Go. Marcus is already inside. Lena walked the 2 blocks to La Boheme on shaking legs, her purse clutched tight against her side. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, exactly as Victor had probably planned. Easier to blend in, harder for Adrian's people to monitor every angle. She spotted Marcus immediately. He was reading a newspaper at a corner table, looking for all the world like a businessman on his lunch break. He didn't acknowledge her, but she felt fractionally safer knowing he was there. Viktor Volkov was already seated at a table near the window. He stood when he saw her, a smile spreading across his handsome face. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 40s, with silver threading through his dark hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Miss Carter, he said warmly, pulling out her chair. Thank you for coming. I don't have much choice, do I? Lena sat, hyper-aware of the wire against her skin, and Marcus 2 tables over and Adrian listening to every word. There's always a choice. Victor signaled the waiter. Coffee? Tea? Lunch, perhaps? Just coffee. Her stomach was too twisted for food. 2 coffees, Victor told the waiter, then turned his full attention to Lena. You look nervous. Oh, I'm about to betray someone who kills people for a living. Nervous seems appropriate. Victor laughed, genuine amusement lighting his eyes. Fair enough, but I assure you, you're doing the right thing. Adrian Cade is a dangerous man. So are you, Lena pointed out. True, but I'm a dangerous man who's offering you a way out. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. Tell me, how did you end up working for him? Lena stuck to the truth as much as possible. Her mother's death, the medical debt, the job that paid too well to refuse. Victor listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that seemed designed to put her at ease. He was good at this, Lena realized. Good at making people feel comfortable, at building rapport. It would be easy to forget who he was if you weren't careful. And now you're trapped, Victor said when she finished, in a world you never asked to be part of, with a man who can't protect you despite all his power. He's trying, Lena said, then caught herself. I mean, I'm sure he would try if he knew I was in danger. Oh, he knows. Victor's smile was cold. He just doesn't know how to stop it. That's the problem with men like Adrian. They think force and fear can solve everything. But some problems require finesse. The waiter brought their coffee. Lena wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for something to do. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Information. Nothing too dramatic. I'm not asking you to steal documents or plant bugs. Just tell me about his routines. When does he meet with his key people? Where does he conduct business? What properties does he visit regularly? Lena took a sip of coffee, buying time to remember the script Adrian had prepared. He meets with Dmitri on Thursdays, usually at a warehouse in Queens. I don't know the exact address, but it's near the waterfront. Victor's eyes sharpened with interest. What do they discuss? I don't know. I'm not invited to those meetings, but he's always tense afterward. Interesting. Victor pulled out his phone and made a note. What else? Lena fed him the carefully crafted lies one by one. A shipment coming in on Saturday that didn't exist. A meeting with a weapons supplier who was actually an undercover cop. A safe house in Brooklyn that Adrian had sold 2 months ago. Victor took notes on everything, asking occasional questions that Lena answered as truthfully as she could without revealing the trap. "You're very observant," he said after 20 minutes. "Adrian is lucky to have you." "I'm not doing this for him," Lena said, because that seemed like something a scared, self-interested person would say. "I'm doing this for me. I want out. And you'll get out, I promise." Victor reached across the table and patted her hand. His palm was cool, smooth, the hand of someone who didn't do his own dirty work. "One more thing. Adrian has a property upstate, a house where he goes when he needs privacy. Do you know where it is?" Lena's heart stuttered. They hadn't prepared for this question. Adrian didn't have a property upstate as far as she knew, which meant Victor was testing her. "I don't know about any upstate property," she said carefully. "He's never mentioned it." Victor watched her face closely. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. If he has one, he's kept it from me." Lena met his eyes, letting her fear show. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all. I was simply curious." Victor smiled, and Lena couldn't tell if she'd passed or failed his test. "You've been very helpful, Miss Carter. More helpful than you know." "So we're done?" "For now. I'll be in touch when I need more information." He stood, pulling out his wallet and dropping cash on the table. "Oh, and Miss Carter, just so we're clear, if you warn Adrian about any of this, if you try to play both sides, I'll know, and then our agreement is void." "I understand." "Good." Victor's hand landed on her shoulder, his grip just a fraction too tight. "It would be a shame if something happened to you. You seem like a genuinely good person caught in a bad situation." He left without another word. Lena sat frozen at the table, her coffee untouched and cooling in front of her. She waited until Marcus stood and walked past, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a silent signal that it was safe to leave. Outside, she found Adrian's car exactly where he'd promised it would be. She climbed into the passenger seat and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Adrian was in the back, listening to the recording of her conversation with Victor through headphones. He pulled them off and met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "You were incredible," he said. "He tested me. Asked about a property upstate that doesn't exist." "I know, I heard. And you handled it perfectly." Adrian leaned forward. "He bought everything. We're in." Lena's hands were shaking again. The adrenaline that had carried her through the meeting was draining away, leaving her hollow and exhausted. "Can we go home now?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, we can go home." Home. When had Adrian's penthouse become home? When had this dangerous, impossible man become the person she felt safest with? Lena didn't have answers. She just closed her eyes and let Adrian's presence ground her while Marcus drove them back through Manhattan traffic. The next 3 days were a waiting game. Victor called twice, once to confirm details about the fake Thursday meeting, once to ask seemingly casual questions about Adrian's daily routine. Each time, Lena fed him the lies they'd prepared, her stomach in knots. Adrian was running out of patience. She could see it in the tension in his shoulders, the way he paced his office late at night, the short, clipped phone calls with Dimitri about contingencies and backup plans. "He's stalling," Adrian said on the third night, staring at the whiteboard in his office where he'd mapped out Victor's likely moves. "He should have made a move by now based on the intel you gave him." "Maybe he's being cautious," Lena offered. "Or maybe he knows it's a trap and he's planning something we haven't anticipated." Adrian dragged his hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I hate this. Hate waiting. Hate not being in control. Hate putting you in danger." "I'm okay." "You shouldn't have to be just okay. You should be safe." He turned to face her, his eyes hollow. "Sometimes I think Marcus was right. That caring about you is the worst decision I ever made." The words stung more than they should have. "Do you mean that?" "No." "Yes. I don't know." Adrian slumped into his chair. "I mean that you deserve better than this. Better than looking over your shoulder and lying to Russian mobsters and dating someone who solves problems with violence." Lena crossed to him and turned his chair so he was facing her. Then she climbed into his lap, straddling him, her hands on either side of his face. "Stop it," she said firmly. "Stop trying to make this decision for me. I chose you, Adrian. I chose this life, messy and dangerous as it is.
You don't get to take that choice away. I'm trying to protect you. I know, but pushing me away isn't protection, it's cowardice. She kissed him, hard and demanding. I love you. And I know you love me even though you're too scared to say it. So stop trying to convince yourself, or me, that this is wrong. Adrian's hands came up to grip her waist, his eyes searching her face. You love me? Obviously. That's a terrible idea. Most of my ideas lately have been terrible. I'm starting to think it's my brand. Lena rested her forehead against his. Say it back. I love you. The words came out rough, like he was dragging them from somewhere deep inside. I love you so much it terrifies me. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I sleep. I'd burn this entire city to the ground if it meant keeping you safe. That's extremely unhealthy. I never claimed to be healthy. Adrian kissed her, slow and deep. But I mean it, every word. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other in his office chair, until Marcus knocked on the door. Boss, we've got movement. Victor's people are mobilizing. Adrian was on his feet instantly, Lena sliding off his lap. Where? Queen's Warehouse. Looks like they're planning to hit the Thursday meeting location after all. Adrian's smile was sharp and dangerous. Good. Get everyone in position. It's time to end this. The warehouse in Queens was a trap wrapped in a trap. Victor's men arrived first, taking up positions around the perimeter exactly as Adrian had predicted they would. They thought they were ambushing a meeting between Adrian and Dimitri. They had no idea Adrian's entire crew was already inside, armed and waiting. Lena watched it unfold from a monitor in Adrian's office. Marcus standing guard at the door, and Adrian pacing beside her like a caged animal. This is taking too long, Adrian muttered. It's been 5 minutes. 5 minutes too long. On screen, Victor's men were moving in, confident and coordinated. Lena counted at least 15 of them, all carrying weapons that looked military grade. They're really committed to this, she said quietly. They want me dead. That kind of goal requires commitment. Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Dimitri. He read it and smiled coldly. They're all inside. Dimitri's giving the signal. On screen, the warehouse exploded into chaos. Adrian's men emerged from their hiding spots with brutal efficiency, surrounding Victor's crew before they could react. It wasn't a fight so much as a slaughter, quick, decisive, and completely one-sided. Lena looked away from the monitor, her stomach churning. Hey! Adrian's hand was on her shoulder, surprisingly gentle. You don't have to watch this part. I should. This is happening because of me. This is happening because Viktor Volkov made the mistake of threatening what's mine. Adrian turned her to face him. You gave us the opportunity to end this on our terms instead of his. That's not something to feel guilty about. Another text came through. Adrian read it and his expression darkened. What is it? Lena asked. Victor wasn't there. He sent his men but stayed back himself. Adrian was already moving toward the door. Marcus, stay with Lena. Don't let her out of your sight. Where are you going? To finish this. Adrian paused at the door, looking back at her. Stay here, please. I need to know you're safe. He left before she could argue. Marcus settled into the chair Adrian had vacated, his expression unreadable. You should sit down. I can't just sit while Adrian's out there. That's exactly what you're going to do. Boss's orders. Marcus gestured to the couch. Sit. We wait. The waiting was torture. Marcus wouldn't let her look at the monitors, wouldn't tell her what was happening, just sat there like a stone statue while Lena slowly lost her mind. An hour passed. Then 2. Lena's phone rang 6 times, Victor's number every time, and Marcus made her ignore it. He knows the ambush failed, Marcus said. He's trying to draw you out. What if he has Adrian? He doesn't. Boss can handle himself. You don't know that. I've known Adrian for 8 years. He survived assassination attempts, gang wars, and a fire that should have killed him when he was 19. He'll survive this too. Lena wanted to believe him, tried to believe him. Then her phone rang again, and this time it wasn't Victor's number. It was unknown, and Marcus let her answer. Hello? Miss Carter? Victor's voice was smooth as ever, but there was an edge underneath it now. I'm disappointed in you. Lena's blood turned to ice.
I don't know what you're talking about. Please, don't insult my intelligence. You fed me false information, led my men into a trap, and helped Adrian Cade kill 15 of my people. Victor's laugh was bitter. I actually thought you were smarter than this, that you understood the danger you were in. Where's Adrian? Safe for now, but that can change very quickly. Background noise came through the line, traffic sounds, people talking. You have two choices, Ms. Carter. You can stay in your ivory tower with Marcus and wait for me to come to you, or you can meet me and we can discuss how to resolve this situation like civilized people. I'm not meeting you anywhere. Then Adrian dies. Simple as that. Victor's voice hardened. I have people watching his location right now. One phone call from me and they move in. He's good. I'll grant you that. But even he can't survive a sniper he doesn't see coming. Lena looked at Marcus, who was already shaking his head violently. Don't do it, Marcus hissed. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, Victor said, clearly able to hear Marcus. But it's a trap that lets you save the man you love. Isn't that worth the risk? Where? Lena asked, her heart pounding. No! Marcus grabbed for her phone, but she dodged. The park. Central Park. Bethesda Fountain. 20 minutes. Come alone, or Adrian dies. Victor paused. And Ms. Carter, I meant what I said before. You seem like a good person. It really would be a shame to kill you, but I will if I have to. The line went dead. Marcus was already on his phone calling someone. Boss, we have a situation. Victor called Lena, threatened to kill you unless she meets him alone. No, she's not going. Yes, I'm sure. He looked up to find Lena heading for the door. What are you doing? What I have to. Lena grabbed her coat from the hook. Tell Adrian I'm sorry, and tell him I love him. Lena, don't... She ran. Marcus was fast, but Lena had surprise on her side. She made it to the elevator and sent it down before he could stop her, his curses echoing down the shaft as she descended. The lobby security tried to stop her, but she dodged around them and burst out onto the street, immediately flagging down a cab. Central Park, she gasped. Bethesda Fountain. And there's an extra 50 if you get me there in under 15 minutes. The driver took the challenge seriously, weaving through traffic with reckless abandon, while Lena's phone exploded with calls and texts from Marcus, from Dimitri, from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored all of them. This was probably the stupidest thing she'd ever done. Walking alone into a meeting with a man who wanted her dead, no backup, no plan, just desperate hope that she could somehow save Adrian. But love made you do stupid things, and Lena Carter loved Adrian Cade enough to die for him if that's what it took. The fountain was exactly where Victor said he'd be, standing with his hands in his pockets like he was just another tourist enjoying the park. He smiled when he saw her approach, but it didn't reach his eyes. You came, he said. I wasn't sure you would. Where is he? Lena demanded. Safe, like I promised. Victor gestured to the bench beside the fountain. Sit, let's talk. I'm done talking. You wanted me, you've got me. Let Adrian go. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Lena's voice shook with fear and anger. This is between you and him. I'm just collateral damage, remember? So take me and leave him alone. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled out his phone, tapping something on the screen before showing it to her. It was a video feed. Adrian, very much alive, pinned down behind a car while bullets sparked off the metal around him. One call, Victor said quietly, and this ends. He dies, you die, and I move on with my life. Then why haven't you made the call? Because I'm curious. Victor pocketed his phone. What is it about you that made Adrian Cade, the most ruthless, untouchable man in this city, vulnerable? What's so special about one housekeeper that he'd risk everything for you? Lena had no answer that would satisfy him, so she told the truth. Nothing. There's nothing special about me. I'm just someone who saw past the monster to the man underneath. And I guess that was enough. Victor's expression shifted, something almost like sadness crossing his features. Love is a weakness in our world. Maybe, or maybe it's the only thing that makes us human. Philosophical until the end. I can respect that. Victor pulled out a gun, the motion casual and practiced. Any last words? Lena thought of Adrian, bleeding behind a car somewhere in the city. Thought of the life they'd been building together,
fragile and impossible and more real than anything she'd ever known. "Tell him I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Tell him it wasn't his fault."
Victor raised the gun, and Adrian's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Step away from her, Victor. Now!" Victor's gun swung away from Lena, pointing instead at the man standing 20 feet away with his own weapon drawn. Adrian looked like hell. Blood streaked down the side of his face from a gash above his eyebrow, his shirt torn and stained, his breathing harsh. But his hands were steady and his eyes were cold murder. "The video was a fake," Lena breathed, understanding flooding through her. "You weren't pinned down at all." "We were recorded 2 hours ago," Victor confirmed, seemingly unsurprised by Adrian's arrival. "I needed you scared enough to come alone, and I needed him desperate enough to make mistakes." He tilted his head, studying Adrian with clinical interest. "Though I'll admit, I didn't expect you to get here quite this fast." "You threatened her." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. "That was your mistake." "Was it? Because from where I'm standing, I have a gun pointed at you, and you have a gun pointed at me. That's what they call a stalemate, Adrian. Neither of us walks away from this." "Wrong." Adrian took a step forward. "I walk away. You don't. That's the only way this ends." "Confident. I always admired that about you." Victor's finger rested lightly on the trigger. "But confidence without strategy is just arrogance. You're outnumbered and outmaneuvered. I have 6 men positioned around this park, all with clear shots at both of you. Even if you kill me, you and your little housekeeper are dead 30 seconds later." Lena's blood ran cold, her eyes scanning the park for threats she couldn't see. "He's bluffing," Adrian said, though he didn't take his eyes off Victor. "If you had backup, you wouldn't need a gun. You'd have already taken the shot. You're betting both your lives on that assumption." "Well, I'm betting on the fact that you're alone because everyone else in your organization is either dead or running scared after what happened at the warehouse." Adrian's smile was terrible. "You came here alone because you have no one left, Victor. No backup, no plan, just desperate hope that you could use Lena to get to me." Victor's expression flickered, just for a moment, but long enough for Lena to see the truth. Adrian was right. They were alone. "Last chance," Adrian said quietly. "Lower the gun and walk away. Leave New York, take what's left of your operation, and never come back. Do that, and I let you live." "You actually think I'd accept that deal?" Victor laughed, harsh and bitter. "You've destroyed everything I built, killed my men, ruined my reputation, turned me into a joke. Walking away changes nothing. I'm dead either way. At least this way I take you with me." "Victor, don't," Lena started. Everything happened at once. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. Adrian threw himself forward, his shot going wild as he collided with Victor. The gun flew from Victor's hand, skittering across the pavement. Both men hit the ground hard, a tangle of fists and fury. Lena scrambled for Victor's gun, her hand shaking so badly she almost couldn't grab it. By the time she had it, Adrian had Victor pinned, one hand locked around his throat and the other drawing back for a punch that would probably kill him. "Adrian, stop!" Lena's voice cut through the violence. "Don't do this!" Adrian's fist hung in the air, trembling with the effort of holding back. "He tried to kill you." "I know, but you're not a murderer. Not like this. Not in cold blood in the middle of Central Park where anyone could see. He doesn't deserve mercy." "Maybe not. But you deserve better than having his death on your conscience." Lena moved closer, still holding the gun, though her hand shook. "We won. He's got nothing left. Let that be enough." For a long, terrible moment, Adrian didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared down at Victor with murder in his eyes and violence coiled in every muscle. Then, slowly, he released Victor's throat and stood up. "You're right," he said quietly. "He's not worth it." Victor coughed, gasping for air, his hand clutching his throat. "You're getting soft, Cade. Love has made you weak." Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, I need a cleanup crew at Bethesda Fountain, and call Petrov. Tell him I'm sending him a gift." He ended the call and looked down at Victor with cold contempt. "The Georgian mob has been looking for you for 2 years. Something about a betrayal in Tbilisi? I'm sure they'll be thrilled to finally settle accounts." Victor's face went white. "You can't." They'll torture me for weeks before they kill me. Should have thought of that before you threatened what's mine. Adrian took Lena's hand, his grip almost painfully tight. Come on, let's go home. They were almost to the park entrance when Victor's voice followed them. She'll leave you eventually, Cade. People like her always do. She'll see what you really are and run, and you'll be alone again. Adrian's jaw clenched, but he didn't look back, just kept walking, his hand wrapped around Lena's like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. Marcus was waiting at the entrance with 3 other men, all heavily armed. He took one look at Adrian's face and wisely didn't ask questions. Handle it, Adrian said shortly. Yes, boss. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. Adrian stared out the window, his hand still gripping Lena's, his jaw tight and his shoulders rigid. Lena wanted to say something, wanted to comfort him, to tell him Victor was wrong, but the words stuck in her throat. She'd almost died tonight. They'd both almost died. And the only reason they hadn't was luck and Adrian's ruthless competence. How many more times could they survive this? At the penthouse, Adrian went straight to his office and poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, downed it in one swallow, poured another. Don't, Lena said quietly from the doorway. Don't what? Don't drink yourself numb. Don't shut me out. Don't do whatever it is you're doing right now. Adrian's hand tightened on the glass. You almost died tonight because of me. Victor almost killed me, not you. Same thing. He drained the second glass and reached for the bottle again. Lena crossed the office and took the bottle from his hands. No, it's not. Victor made his choices and you made yours. You don't get to take responsibility for what he did. I put you in that position, Adrian's voice cracked. I asked you to spy for me, to lie to a dangerous man, to risk your life for my vendetta. That's on me. I chose to do it. You didn't force me. I should have sent you away when this started, should have put you in a safe house in the middle of nowhere and kept you there until this was over. I wouldn't have gone. I should have made you. Adrian finally looked at her, and the raw anguish in his eyes made her chest ache. Victor was right. I've gotten soft. Weak. I let my feelings for you cloud my judgment, and it almost got you killed. Lena set the bottle down and moved to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me, she said firmly. Loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And being human means making mistakes and being scared and not always knowing the right answer. But it also means fighting for what matters, and you fought for me tonight. That's not weakness, Adrian, that's strength. You're wrong. But his voice was quieter now, less certain. I'm not. And deep down, you know I'm not. She took his face in her hands. I love you. All of you. The good parts, and the broken parts, and the parts that scare me sometimes. And I'm not going anywhere. Victor was wrong about that too. How can you be sure? Because I've seen who you are when you think no one's watching. I've seen you be kind and generous and surprisingly funny. I've seen you struggle to trust and fail at boundaries and try anyway because you care about me. Lena's voice softened. That's who you really are, Adrian. Not the monster everyone else sees. Not the cold, ruthless crime boss. Just a man trying to figure out how to love someone without destroying them. Adrian pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. His whole body was shaking. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. How to be with you without constantly terrifying myself that I'm going to lose you. One day at a time. That's all any of us can do. Lena held him tightly. And maybe we get some therapy, both of us, because this has been objectively traumatic and we probably shouldn't process it alone. Adrian laughed, a broken, watery sound that was almost a sob. Therapy. You want me to go to therapy? I want us to be okay, and I don't think we can do that without help. She pulled back enough to see his face. Can you do that? For me? For us? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, he said roughly. We'll try therapy. Thank you. They stood there holding each other until Marcus knocked on the door. Sorry to interrupt, he said, his expression carefully neutral. But Dimitri says the Georgians picked up their package. Victor's officially not our problem anymore. Adrian's grip on Lena tightened fractionally. Good. Anything else? The warehouse is cleaned up. No evidence, no witnesses. And I've doubled security on the building. No one gets within 50 feet without us knowing about it. Thank you, Marcus.
Marcus hesitated. For what it's worth, boss, you made the right call tonight. Letting him live long enough to hand him over shows restraint. Lena's restraint, not mine. Still counts. Marcus nodded at Lena. You're good for him. Don't know if anyone's told you that, but you are. He left before Lena could respond. Adrian sighed and released her reluctantly. I should shower. I'm covered in blood and probably terrifying your delicate sensibilities. My sensibilities stopped being delicate about 3 months ago. Lena caught his hand before he could leave. Adrian, we're going to be okay. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. We're going to be okay because we're going to work at it. Together. She squeezed his hand. Now go shower. You do actually smell terrible. That got a real smile from him, small and tired, but genuine. The next few weeks were strange. The immediate danger was gone, but the aftermath lingered. Lena jumped at unexpected noises. Adrian installed enough security equipment to monitor a small country. They both had nightmares, but they also found a therapist, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in trauma and didn't blink when Lena carefully explained their situation without mentioning anything illegal. If Dr. Chen suspected Adrian's import-export business was code for organized crime. She was professional enough not to ask. Trust is going to be your biggest challenge, Dr. Chen said during their third session together. You've both been through situations that taught you trust is dangerous. Learning to trust each other, really trust, not just intellectually but emotionally, is going to take time and consistent effort. How much time? Adrian asked. There's no timeline. It happens when it happens. Dr. Chen looked at them thoughtfully. But I will say this. You're both clearly committed to making this work. That's half the battle right there. Outside the therapy office, Adrian took Lena's hand as they walked toward his car. She's right, Sheb, he said quietly. About trust being hard for me. For both of us, Lena corrected. I'm not exactly great at it either. You trusted me enough to stay when you should have run. And you trusted me enough to let me in when you should have kept me out. She bumped his shoulder with hers. I'd say we're even. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, I want to do something. What? Something normal. Something couples do when they're not running from Russian mobsters or processing trauma. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Go on a date with me. A real date. Dinner and maybe a movie or whatever normal people do. Lena felt a smile spread across her face. Adrian Cade wants to take me on a normal date? Don't sound so surprised. I can be normal. You absolutely cannot be normal. But I love you anyway. She kissed him, sweet and soft. Yes, I'll go on a date with you. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the village, the kind of place with checked tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and servers, who actually seemed to enjoy their jobs. Adrian was visibly uncomfortable at first. He kept scanning the room for threats, his shoulders tight with tension. But gradually, as the evening wore on, he started to relax, started to smile more, started to look less like a crime boss monitoring his territory and more like a man on a date with someone he cared about. This is nice, Lena said over dessert. We should do this more often. What, eat tiramisu? Be normal. Do regular couple things. Pretend for a few hours that we're just two people who met under non-traumatic circumstances. Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. I like that idea. Good. Because I'm going to hold you to it. Lena squeezed his fingers. Starting with meeting my friends from school. They keep asking why I never bring my mysterious boyfriend around. Adrian's expression shifted. Not quite panic, but close. Your friends? Yes, Adrian, friends. Normal people have them. I don't do well with normal people. You'll do fine. You just have to not mention anything illegal and try not to look like you're calculating how to kill everyone in the room. That's asking a lot. I have faith in you. Lena grinned at his discomfort. Besides, they already think you're some kind of mysterious millionaire who swept me off my feet. Just play that up and you'll be fine. Adrian groaned. This is going to be a disaster. It wasn't a disaster. Though it came close when Adrian accidentally mentioned something about shipping containers that made Lena kick him under the table. Her study group, 3 other adults juggling work and school,
found him charming if slightly intimidating, which was probably the best Lena could have hoped for. Your boyfriend is intense, her friend Rachel said when Adrian stepped away to take a call. But in like a hot way? Is that weird to say? It's definitely weird to say. But Lena was smiling. He's complicated. Complicated rich, though. That's the best kind of complicated. If only Rachel knew just how complicated. The months that followed were a study in contrasts. There were still moments of darkness, nights when Adrian woke up from nightmares about finding Lena dead, days when Lena couldn't shake the memory of Victor's gun pointed at her head. But there were also moments of surprising normalcy, Sunday mornings making pancakes together, studying for midterms while Adrian worked through contracts at the other end of the couch, arguing about whether to watch action movies or documentaries, learning to exist together in ways that felt comfortable instead of constantly terrifying. Adrian even started pulling back from some of the more violent aspects of his business, delegating to Dimitri and focusing more on the legitimate investments he'd been building for years. It was slow, cautious, but it was progress. And Lena finished her semester with a 3.8 GPA and a job offer from one of the companies where she'd interned, a small accounting firm that specialized in nonprofit auditing. Legal, boring, exactly the kind of normal career she'd dreamed about. She accepted the offer immediately. "I'm proud of you," Adrian said when she told him. They were sitting on his balcony, watching the sun set over Manhattan. "You worked hard for this." "We worked hard for this," Lena corrected. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "You could have. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." Adrian pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. "But I'm glad I got to be part of it anyway." Lena rested her head against his shoulder, feeling content in a way she hadn't thought possible 6 months ago. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have a job. A real normal job. I can afford my own apartment if I want. I don't need to live here anymore." She felt Adrian tense beside her. "I'm not saying I want to leave. I'm just saying the original reason I took this job doesn't exist anymore. So what happens now?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to know what you want." "Lena." He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "I want you to stay. Not because you work for me or because you need the money, but because you want to be here. With me. Building something that's ours." "Like what?" "Like a life. A real life, not just survival." Adrian took a breath. "I know I'm not easy. I know I come with baggage and danger and a past that's going to follow me forever, but I'm trying to be better. For you. For us. And if you're willing to stay, I promise I'll spend every day trying to be the man you deserve." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. That was almost romantic. Almost? You hedged with trying to be better instead of just saying you love me and want me here. Adrian's mouth twitched. "I love you. I want you here. Was that better?" "Much better." Lena kissed him, soft and sweet. "I'll stay. Not as your housekeeper, not as someone who needs your protection, but as your partner, your equal, someone who chooses to be here every single day. I can work with that." They sat together as the sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Below them, the city continued its chaotic existence. Millions of people living millions of lives, most of them never knowing about the violence and danger that existed in the shadows. Lena used to be one of those people. Normal, invisible, struggling, but safe. Now she was something else entirely. Someone who'd seen the darkness and chosen to stay anyway. Someone strong enough to stand beside a dangerous man and not lose herself in the process. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, Lena came home from work to find Adrian standing in the living room with a bottle of champagne and a nervous expression she'd never seen before. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately, her mind jumping to worst-case scenarios. "Nothing's wrong. Adrian set down the champagne and ran his hand through his hair. "I wanted to do this right. Make it special. But I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks and I can't wait anymore." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Lena's breath caught. I know we've only been together for less than a year, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. I know I'm still working on being less controlling and more trusting. I know we still have therapy appointments and trauma to process, and 1,000 reasons why this might be too soon. Adrian, but I also know that you're the best thing that ever happened to me, that you make me want to be better, do better, build something worth having, and I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're mine, really mine. Not just because you live here or because we're together, but because you chose me, permanently. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was simple and elegant and nothing like the ostentatious jewelry Lena would have expected from a man with Adrian's resources. Marry me, he said simply. Choose me. Choose this. Choose us. Lena looked at the ring, then at Adrian's face, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified in equal measure. She thought about the past year, the danger and the fear and the moments when she'd been certain neither of them would survive, but also the growth and the healing and the slow, steady building of something real between them. She thought about the future, the career she was building, the life she wanted, the person she was becoming. And she thought about Adrian. Complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender Adrian who'd let her into his fortress and his heart and was now offering her everything he had. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise. They were going to be okay. They were going to build something good out of all the darkness and pain. They were going to have a future that neither of them had believed was possible. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably never be completely safe. But it would be theirs, and that was enough. The wedding was small, held in Adrian's penthouse, with only Marcus, Dimitri, and a handful of Lena's friends from school. Dr. Chen attended, smiling proudly at the two of them like a parent watching their children graduate. Even the judge who performed the ceremony seemed charmed by their obvious devotion to each other, despite probably suspecting Adrian's business wasn't entirely legal. Lena wore a simple white dress she'd found at a boutique in Soho. Adrian wore a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, but somehow still managed to look understated. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about trust and patience and choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. When the judge pronounced them married, Adrian kissed her like she was the only person in the world. Marcus got quietly emotional, which he denied vehemently later. Dimitri gave them a wedding present that turned out to be a very illegal painting he'd stolen from a private collection in Milan, which Adrian immediately had to figure out how to return without anyone getting arrested. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely perfect. That night, after everyone had left and the caterers had cleaned up, Adrian and Lena stood on the balcony watching the city lights. Mrs. Cade, Adrian said, testing out the name. That's going to take some getting used to. I'm keeping Carter professionally, Lena reminded him. The accounting firm doesn't need to know I married someone with your reputation. Smart. Though I have to admit I like the idea of you having my name. Possessive much? Always. But he was smiling. Is that a problem? Not when you're honest about it. Lena turned to face him, her arms wrapping around his waist. We're really doing this, building a life together. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. She kissed him softly. Though I reserve the right to panic occasionally about being married to a reformed criminal. Semi-reformed, Adrian corrected. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. I'm working on it. He pulled her closer. Give me time. I'll get there eventually. Lena believed him. Not because Adrian was perfect, he wasn't, and probably never would be, but because he was trying. Because every day he chose to be better, to trust more, to let her in a little further. That was all anyone could really ask for. A year after their wedding, Lena got a promotion at work. Adrian officially transferred majority ownership of his less legal businesses to Dimitri and focused exclusively on his legitimate investments. They bought a house upstate, actually bought it this time, not as a front but as a genuine escape from the city. Somewhere quiet, where they could breathe without constantly looking over their shoulders. They weren't perfect. They still argued about boundaries and trust, and Adrian's tendency to solve problems with intimidation rather than communication. They still had moments where the past crept up on them, where Lena remembered Victor's gun or Adrian woke up from nightmares about losing her. But they worked through it, together. Dr. Chen eventually graduated them from weekly therapy to monthly check-ins, proud of the progress they'd made. Marcus started dating someone, a teacher from his daughter's school who somehow wasn't intimidated by his job or his boss. Dmitri sent postcards from increasingly exotic locations, each one cheerfully detailing some new criminal enterprise that Adrian absolutely did not want to know about. Life went on. And one morning, 2 years after that first midnight coffee conversation that had started everything, Lena woke up to find Adrian already awake and watching her. "Still creepy," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "Can't help it. You're mesmerizing when you sleep." "That's not better." But she was smiling. "What time is it?" "Early. The sun's not up yet." Adrian brushed her hair back from her face, his touch gentle. "I was thinking about something. That's usually dangerous. Remember when Marcus told you not to think you were special, that first day you started working here?" Lena rolled onto her side to face him properly. "I remember." "He was wrong." Adrian's voice was quiet, serious. "You are special, not because of anything you did, but because you're you. You're kind and strong and stubborn and brave. You looked at me when I was at my worst and decided I was worth saving. That's not something I take lightly." "Adrian, let me finish." He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I spent most of my life alone because I thought it was safer. Thought I couldn't be hurt if I didn't care about anyone. And then you came along and ruined all of that. Made me care. Made me hope. Made me believe I could have something more than just survival. I didn't ruin anything. I fixed it." "You fixed me," Adrian agreed. "And I just wanted to say thank you. For staying when you should have run. For loving me when I didn't deserve it. For building this life with me, even though it's been hard and scary, and definitely not what you signed up for." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "You're welcome. Though for the record, you did deserve it. You've always deserved it." "Agree to disagree on that one." He pulled her closer, and Lena settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you, Lena." "I love you too." They lay there as the sun slowly rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and built something good anyway. Two people who'd chosen each other over and over again through danger and fear and trauma. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And it was theirs. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years later, when people asked Lena how she'd ended up married to Adrian Cade, she never quite knew what to say. The truth was too complicated, too full of danger and violence and choices that seemed impossible in hindsight. So she'd smile and give them the simple version, the one where she'd taken a job as a housekeeper and fallen in love with her difficult, complicated, surprisingly tender boss. She left out the part about the Russian mob and the warehouse ambush and the gun pointed at her head in Central Park. Left out the therapy and the nightmares and the slow, painful process of learning to trust someone completely. Left out everything that made their story theirs. Because some stories were too precious to share, too personal, too hard-won, too full of scars and survival, and refusing to give up even when it would have been easier. Their story was one of those. And Lena was okay with that. She had Adrian, she had her career, she had a life she'd built from nothing but debt and desperation and sheer stubborn refusal to accept less than she deserved. She had everything she'd ever wanted, even if it looked nothing like she'd imagined. And that, in the end, was the whole point. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. The ones that terrified you and challenged you and forced you to be braver than you thought possible. Lena Carter, now Lena Cade, though she still used Carter at work, had learned that lesson the hard way. But she'd learned it, and she wouldn't change a single thing.